I never really understood why videos like this are super popular, because ideally, if you want to make your physique as aesthetic as possible, you likely want to be training every single muscle group, as it's going to be a well-proportioned physique that is going to be the most aesthetic. But with that said, some muscles are admittedly more noticeable than others, especially if you're wearing clothes if you're a civilized human being, which I barely make the cut. So let's get into it. The 3 most important muscle groups to train for aesthetics, how to actually train them, and then at the end, I'm gonna get into a 4th recommendation that is arguably the most important recommendation of them all if you truly want to become aesthetic. Let's get into it. All right, so I'm gonna be going in reverse order, technically starting in 3rd place, and that is gonna be the triceps. You see, I think a big part of being aesthetic is being able to fill your sleeves. At least a lot of guys care about this. Being able to fill a sleeve in a t-shirt, making your arms look big. And it just so happens that if you're talking about like pure arm size, the triceps make up roughly 2/3 of the upper arm. It's likely to be the biggest bang for your buck if you're really trying to move the needle on increasing the girth of your pythons. In other words, working on your triceps will have the biggest direct impact on increasing your overall arm size. And let me tell you, filling your sleeves on a short sleeve t-shirt is one thing, but if you can get to the point where you look big in a long sleeve, oh, in my opinion, that's like you're getting to cream of the crop arm size there. But how do we actually train them? Well, the good news is that you probably already know a few tricep exercises. They're incredibly easy to actually train and isolate. However, there are some common main issues a lot of people face when they're performing tricep exercises. And this is usually concerned with 1, not bringing your chest, front delts, or lats into the movement. Number 2, making sure you're putting your shoulders in a pain-free, comfortable position as you progressive overload on a tricep extension. Number 3, on compound movements, modifying the movement so the triceps can actually be biased as opposed to the chest or the front delts. Number 4, avoiding that god-awful elbow pain that a lot of us experience as we progress and use heavier weights on our exercise. Now I'm gonna cover the first 3 issues later, but let's talk about that elbow pain issue. Now, a lot of people tend to experience more elbow pain on overhead tricep exercise such as this. So I always recommend, as you program tricep exercises, I would start my triceps training with more of a press down or kickback type motion with your arms at your sides, and then gradually later in the workout, as the elbow joint and the triceps were more warm, go into those overhead exercises. And then in general, isolateral or unilateral exercises where each limb is responsible for its own weight tends to feel a little bit more ergonomic on the elbow joint as well as the shoulder joint compared to if you're using one rope attachment that is one cable pulley. And then if we're talking about elbow pain on a compound movement, the main thing you want to focus on is making sure the wrist and elbow joint is stacked when you're actually pressing. Elbow pain typically arises, especially on a close grip bench press, when the distance between your wrists ends up being more narrow than the distance between your elbows. So you're kind of pressing like this. And then the second factor is making sure you're controlling the eccentric on the way down and aiming for a soft lockout when you finish the concentric. This is not only going to make more apparent if your form is like messed up anywhere, but aiming for a soft lockout rather than a hard lockout will decrease the chance of you like slightly hyperextending your elbow at the top, which is not going to be that good. Especially if you're the type of person that tends to have the habit of resting at the top of a bench press with your elbows locked out. And then on to exercise selection for the triceps. We got to start out with the unilateral crossbody tricep extension. Now, I like performing tricep exercises unilaterally because you can really manipulate your shoulder position to make it as comfortable for you as possible. A lot of people, if they use a rope, they tend to be limited by the length of the rope, and you end up pressing in this more like internally rotated shoulder position, which can cause some shoulder pain sometimes. So that is not the only benefit of doing the crossbody setup. I also find that in this crossbody position, it's a lot harder to actually cheat on the exercise, such as bringing your chest in it with a traditional tricep push down, or bringing in your lats and kind of have your shoulders right up. And this crossbody position is a lot easier. Just stabilize the shoulder joint and focus on extending the tricep down. So if you're interested in some free protein powder, My Protein's me giving away a free tub of watermelon clear whey protein, 20 grams of protein, 90 calories, plus 50% off your entire order at checkout when you use code TYLRPath at checkout. This deal goes live November 27th, Wednesday, 9 a.m. EST, so that's literally tomorrow from the day I uploaded this video. All you gotta do is use code TYLRPath at checkout and should automatically add to your cart. Now, last Black Friday, if y'all were there, we pretty much sold them out. So I tried to get an inventory count from My Protein this time, and they told me that there should be roughly 245 tubs up for grabs before they actually sell out of this. So if you guys wanna make sure you actually get it, I recommend setting a reminder for tomorrow, Wednesday, November 27th, 9 a.m. EST and pretty much get that order in as soon as possible to ensure you're getting the free gift. In the worst case that you don't, you're still gonna be getting 50% off your entire order, so that is a sweet deal if you're looking to stock up on protein powder. Check it out. And then moving on to the second place muscle group, and that is none other than the biceps. While the biceps is the smaller of the two superficial muscle groups of the upper arm, it is generally more noticeable, especially since it's kind of like in front of you. Plus, if you're training the biceps directly, you're actually also indirectly training the forearms. So in other words, training both the triceps and the biceps will actually have a huge net effect on your overall arm aesthetics. It pretty much covers everything regarding your two upper limbs. And considering the first place muscle group that we're gonna talk about next, you'll understand why the biceps has to be on this list. It'll make sense. First off, the main function of the biceps is to bend the elbow joint. So in order to best isolate the biceps, you want to avoid moving the other two nearby joints. The second point to remember is the most important part of the range of motion when you're training the biceps is going to be the more lengthened part of the range of motion, meaning the bottom half of the range of motion is going to be more important than the upper half because it's this bottom portion where the biceps will have the best leverage to do the act of bending the elbow. So on that first point, we want to isolate the act of bending the elbow, meaning we don't want to be moving our shoulders when we're doing a bicep curl because this is going to bring in the front delts into the movement. But a lot of you guys already knew that. The more sneaky thing you have to keep in mind is not moving the wrist joints either. Particularly, you want to avoid flexing the wrist when you're doing a bicep curl for the same reason as mentioned before. And then as far as exercise selection go for the biceps, the unilateral dumbbell preacher curl is going to be the best way to train your biceps, in my opinion, because it's also the most stable way to actually perform a bicep exercise. Now, I know the Bayesian cable curl is like all the rage right now because of Jeff Nippard, and you know, I tried, guys. I've tried to like this exercise, but compared to unilateral dumbbell preacher curl, it's just simply not as stable. Your shoulder joint's more prone to moving forward and everything, so it's a lot harder to actually isolate the biceps, especially as you approach failure. Compared to something like a preacher curl where, because we're using this pad, our shoulder joint's pretty much stable, the only point of stability you really have to focus on is actually just a wrist joint. Because you see, when you're doing a bicep curl, you want to make sure that your wrist is going to be relatively neutral. I even allow my wrist to go slightly extended just to avoid curling. You don't want to curl your wrist as you do the bicep curl, or else you're shifting a lot of the focus on to more of the anterior compartment of your forearms. And moving on to the first place muscle group, it's actually a combination of three muscle groups, and that is the shoulder, the deltoid. Now, you may have noticed that all three muscle groups mentioned in this video are all close to each other. They all take up this region over here, kind of like making like a B-shaped thing. And it's my theory, I'm gonna call it like the B theory. This region of the physique, for most men, is gonna be the most important area if you wanna maximize aesthetics. Because if you think about it, most people might have a hard time dieting all the way down to like 8% and seeing their abs. Well, the good news is that as you get leaner, one of the first areas to get lean for men is gonna be this arm region, seeing the separation between the arm as well as the delts. On top of that, if you think about it, most of the time you're gonna be wearing clothes, so people aren't really gonna see your abs. People barely will see your chest unless you're wearing like some really low cut shirt. Questionable choice in my opinion. But if you're wearing a tight t-shirt, if you're wearing a tank top, playing volleyball, whatever it is, this region is usually gonna be pretty exposed, and I think it screams out to people, hey, this guy has a pretty aesthetic physique. At least that's what I usually think. And then talking about the deltoid specifically, I think there's something about having a broad looking physique up top, having it come into like this Dorito V shape that really structures your body for aesthetics. Having bigger shoulders just make you look more broader in baggy clothes even. In fact, if you're looking for aesthetic oversized gym clothes, then I highly recommend you check out Able, my clothing sponsor. They're currently running a Black Friday sale, which is up to 60% off. So if you're gonna experiment with a new gym brand, like now's probably the time. You're gonna get a massive discount. But on top of that, if you use code PATH at checkout, that up to 60% now becomes up to 70% because you get an additional 10% off at checkout. So the support would be much appreciated. If you need gym clothes, check that out. Good value in my opinion. Let's get back to the video. And then when it comes to training these shoulders, you wanna be training all three heads, the front delt, side delt, and rear delts. However, I would personally recommend dedicating additional volume and specified volume, meaning you focus on the side and rear delts. The reason being is for a lot of individuals, going about life, the side and rear delts tend to be more underdeveloped muscle groups compared to the front delts, which are usually involved in most pressing exercises. So in terms of proportionality, I think it makes sense to really focus on these side and rear delts. Getting back to exercise selection, for these side delts, I highly recommend you incorporate the lying cable lateral raise. In my opinion, that is the best lateral raise variation out there. And then for the rear delts, I personally recommend a high to low cable reverse fly. You can pretty much use the same exact equipment on both exercises, so it could be a pretty good superset you can do together, but those are my two bread and butter side and rear delt exercises. All right, so if you made it this far, don't click out of the video. This is the most important part if you're trying to maximize aesthetics. I'm gonna keep it super real here. Focusing on these three muscle groups is good, but honestly, for the average person out there, what's gonna move the needle for you the most in improving your overall aesthetics is lowering your body fat percentage. Ideally getting to a sub 15% body. You see, dude, you can be blasting side delts, focusing on the three muscle groups and really progressive overloading on all your exercises, but you're not gonna really see the separation between your delts as well as the biceps and triceps, this B action I'm talking about, if you're at too high of a body fat percentage. And I know there's a stigma out there for you guys watching where you don't wanna be too light, especially if you're starting from a position where you're skinny fat right now. You can probably relate to this, but ironically, you will look more muscular if you are leaner. Living proof is me. I'm 5'6", 135 pounds. I'm considered light for even my height, but I look the way I do because I'm at a lower body fat percentage. And real quick, I'm not telling you to diet and just avoid lifting weights. I'm actually telling you quite the opposite. A lot of beginners watching here, you will have a good ability to actually body recomp, that is lose fat as well as build muscle at the same time, if you take the diet slow. So here's my advice right here. I'm gonna lay it out. 1, follow a workout routine where you can be consistent with. Train hard, progressive overload. 2, on the dieting end, make sure you're trying to be in a small deficit. You can do this without even tracking by eating more vegetables, prioritizing lean protein, sticking to a more satiating food, more voluminous food. They take up a lot of space, have a lot of fiber. And then remember, we don't only have to diet, we can approach it from the other end by moving more, keeping your activity levels high, whether it be aiming for 10K steps, doing dedicated cardio if you like that, playing sports if you're passionate about that. And if you want personal guidance and someone to just tell you exactly what you need to be doing to get to your fitness goals in a sustainable way, then consider applying my one-on-one fitness coaching program where I've helped hundreds of people at this point transform their life, transform their physique, and basically do it in a way that actually still fits their lifestyle and is long-term sustainable. In other words, showing you how to do what I just said earlier in a way that you can actually stick to. So anyways, good luck on the gains, or more should I say, good luck on your entire fitness journey. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. It's almost the end of the year, guys. For those that stuck around since New Year's, I have to say, keep it up. You're a real one, but more importantly, congrats on being able to work out consistently for almost the entire year at this point. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please leave a like to support my page, hit subscribe to level up your physique, and don't forget to hit the bell notification to get these videos right to you. I'll see you on the next one.